I, 28 am currently sitting on a beach in Bora Bora, sipping a drink out of a coconut and watching my new husband attempt to paddleboard. My phone is currently a graveyard of desperate, urgent notifications, but I wouldn't know because I changed my number the second my plane touched down. I was the senior systems administrator for a mid-sized logistics firm for 4 years. I built their entire network from the ground up. I'm talking servers, security protocols, encrypted databases, the works. My boss, Mike 45M, is the kind of guy who thinks the cloud is an actual weather formation and believes IT is just a cost center that doesn't produce real value like sales does. 6 months ago, I requested 3 weeks off for my wedding and honeymoon. I gave him 180 days notice. I documented everything. I even spent my final week creating a 50-page emergency manual for the junior tech, covering everything except the master administrative passwords. Why? Because per company security policy, which Mike himself signed, master credentials must be held by the senior admin and a secured physical backup in the company vault. Well, Mike forgot to pay the vendor for the vault's digital lock maintenance, so the physical backup was stuck behind a dead keypad. I told him this a month ago. He told me to stop whining and get back to work. My wedding was yesterday, at 10:30 a.m. While I was literally standing in my suit getting my hair adjusted, my phone buzzed. It was an email from Mike. Due to your lack of dedication and prioritizing personal events over the Q4 launch prep, your services are no longer required. Effective immediately. Turn in your badge by Monday. Don't bother calling. The lack of dedication was me taking my pre-approved vacation for my own wedding. The entitlement was bone deep. He figured he'd fire me, save on my salary, and the junior kid would just keep things running. He forgot one tiny detail. I am the only person with the root access keys for the primary shipping servers, and those servers require a manual handshake every 24 hours, or they go into a security lockdown. I didn't reply. I just handed my phone to my best man, told him to put it in the hotel safe, and went to get married. It was the best day of my life. I turned my phone back on this morning at the airport. It was like a digital explosion. 11:15 a.m. Wedding day, Mike. Hey, the main dashboard is showing a credential sync error. Fix it real quick so the weekend shift can log in. 1 p.m. Mike. Why aren't you answering? This isn't funny. The shipping labels aren't printing. 3:30 p.m. during my vows, Mike. I've been calling the junior tech. He says he doesn't have the master override. Give me the password now. 6 p.m. Mike. Listen, I was stressed earlier. The firing was a misunderstanding. We can talk about a raise when you get back. Just send the password for the SQL server. We are losing $10,000 an hour installed shipments. By the time I reached Bora Bora, the tone had shifted from angry boss to distraught toddler. He had sent 42 texts and 15 voicemails. The servers had officially entered hard lockdown mode. Since I was fired, my legal obligation to maintain the system ended the second that email hit my inbox. I finally sent him one single email from my new private account. Mike, as I am no longer an employee, providing technical support would be a violation of the termination of access clause in my contract. You also have my final paycheck and my unused PTO balance, approximate $12,000, sitting in your pending pile. Since you fired me for a lack of dedication, I've decided to dedicate myself fully to my husband. Good luck with the manual reboot. I hear it takes a specialist about a week to crack those encryptions, if they're lucky. The revenge is that Mike's cost-cutting move has now cost the company nearly $250,000 in lost revenue and a massive contract with a national retailer. My lawyer, who I hired this morning, is already preparing a wrongful termination suit. In our state, while at will is the rule, firing someone on their wedding day after approving the leave in writing is a bad faith breach of contract that judges absolutely loathe. I also sent a tip to the company's board of directors, who Mike answers to, with a copy of his wedding day firing email and a screenshot of the 30-day warning I gave him about the vault lock. I just got a LinkedIn notification. Mike's title was changed to former CEO. He wanted dedication. Well, I'm dedicated to enjoying this sunset. Good luck with the server rack, Mike. I hear the fans are pretty loud this time of year. If you want to see the photos of Mike's face when he realized a $60,000 salary was cheaper than a $250,000 server crash, hit that subscribe button. I'm thinking about starting a consulting firm, and my first rule is, no mics allowed. The first few days of my honeymoon were pure bliss, but by day 4, Mike's desperation had officially crossed into criminal territory. Since I wasn't answering my personal phone, he actually tracked down my mother's landline and told her there was a national security emergency, and that I needed to call him or the FBI would be at my door. My mother, who is a retired schoolteacher and doesn't rattle easily, told him to get a hobby and hung up. But Mike wasn't done. He decided that if he couldn't bully me into giving up the passwords, he would frame me. While I was out snorkeling, Mike called the local police in my hometown and filed a report for grand larceny of intellectual property and computer sabotage. He claimed that I had intentionally encrypted and kidnapped the company's data before being fired. He even lied and said I had demanded a ransom in the form of a $50,000 severance package. The dirty trick backfired the second the police showed up at my house. My sister, who was house-sitting, called my lawyer immediately. My lawyer, a man who lives for the thrill of a countersuit, was waiting for them. "Officer," my lawyer said, handing over a folder. "Here is the pre-approved vacation request. Here is the wedding day termination email sent after the systems went into their automated security cycle. And here is the 30-day warning my client sent regarding the vault lock that Mike neglected to fix. There is no ransom. There is only a man who fired his keys and is now mad he can't open the door." The police dropped the investigation within an hour, but Mike's entitlement was so massive he didn't stop. He actually contacted my husband's employer, a major architecture firm, and told them that my husband was conspiring with a cyber criminal and that they should reconsider his employment. That was the nail in Mike's coffin. That's not just a workplace dispute. That's tortious interference. When we landed back in the States, I didn't go to the office. I went straight to a meeting with the board of directors. They had called an emergency session because the company had been dark for 6 days. The loss was now estimated at $600,000. Mike was there, looking like he'd been sleeping in his car, smelling of stale coffee and panic. "He's here," Mike shouted, pointing a shaky finger at me. "He's the one. He's holding the company hostage. Arrest him." The chairman of the board just looked at Mike with a look of pure exhaustion. "Mike, sit down. We've seen the emails. We've seen the timestamp of your dedication speech. You fired the only person who could maintain the system on his wedding day, while the backup was locked in a vault you refused to maintain." Then the revenge reached its peak. My lawyer stood up and presented a settlement demand. "We are filing for wrongful termination, defamation, and tortious interference against both the company and Mike personally. However," my lawyer smiled, "my client is a reasonable man. He will provide the root access keys today, but only under a professional consulting agreement. The rate? $50,000 for a one-time emergency recovery service, plus a full payout of my original contract, and a signed NDA that forbids Mike from ever mentioning my name again." The board didn't even hesitate. They made Mike sign the check from the company's emergency reserve. Then they fired him for gross negligence right there in the boardroom. As Mike was being escorted out by security, I leaned over and whispered, "The master password was, Mike is an idiot 123. I said it a month ago when you ignored my warning about the vault. If you'd just been a decent person, you would have known." The revenge was so satisfying that I didn't even mind the 3 hours it took to fix the servers. I walked out of that building with a $50,000 consulting check and my head held high. Mike is currently being sued by the board to recoup the $600,000 loss. And last I heard, he's trying to find work as a management consultant. Good luck with that, Mike. I hear the dedication in the unemployment line is top tier. If you want to hear about the time the junior tech tried to hack my system and ended up accidentally deleting Mike's private bonus folder, hit that subscribe button. I've got the logs to prove it. 3 weeks after Mike was escorted out of the boardroom, I was busy setting up my own independent consulting firm using the $50,000 emergency recovery fee as seed money. I thought Mike was finally buried under the weight of his own incompetence, but entitled men like him don't just go away. They rot from the inside out and try to take everyone with them. Mike decided to file a pro-se lawsuit, representing himself because no reputable firm would take the case, against me for breach of fiduciary duty and economic extortion. His logic? He claimed that by setting the master password to something insulting like Mike is an idiot 123, I had created a hostile work environment before I was fired, which somehow invalidated my right to the $50,000 settlement. He also claimed I forced the board to pay me while he was under emotional duress. The dirty trick he pulled next was a classic Mike move. He leaked a heavily edited version of the server logs to a local tech blog, making it look like I had backdoor access and was still snooping in the company's files after I left. He wanted to ruin my professional reputation so my new consulting firm would fail before it even started. My lawyer didn't even break a sweat. He's basically handing us the rope to hang him with, he said. We met in a small mediation room. Mike showed up looking disheveled, carrying a briefcase that I'm pretty sure was just full of printouts from his own Facebook rants. He sat down and sneered at me. I'm going to make sure you never work in this town again. You think you're so smart? That $50,000 is company money. You're going to give it back, and then you're going to apologize to me in writing for the insult of that password. I didn't say a word. I just nodded to my lawyer. Mike, my lawyer said, sliding a tablet across the table. While you were busy leaking logs to blogs, the board authorized us to do a full forensic audit of your work computer. It turns out that while my client was lacking dedication on his wedding day, you were using the company's high-speed servers to run a private crypto mining operation. That's why the servers were under so much stress, and that's why you were so desperate for the passwords, not to ship boxes, but to hide your digital gold mine before the board saw the power bills. Mike's face went from smug to ghostly white in 3 seconds. He'd been stealing company resources for months, and the hard lockdown I triggered had essentially frozen his illegal mining rig in place, creating a perfect trail of evidence for the auditors. The board isn't just defending against your lawsuit, Mike. I finally spoke up. They've authorized me as their new external security consultant to hand over these files to the IRS and the police. You didn't lose $600,000 because of a missing password. You lost it because you were a thief. The revenge was the finality of his total destruction. To avoid criminal charges for the crypto theft, Mike had to sign an agreement to drop all his claims against me, surrender his remaining company stock, worth about $100,000, and pay for the decontamination of the server room. He left that room with nothing. No job, no stock, and a reputation so radioactive that even a help desk wouldn't hire him. I, on the other hand, was officially hired by the board as their primary security auditor on a 6-figure retainer. The last time I saw Mike, he was working at a We Fix It phone kiosk at the local mall. I walked past with my husband, and Mike tried to hide behind a stack of shattered iPad screens. I didn't say anything. I just checked the time on my watch, the one I bought with the first check from my new company. Mike wanted dedication. Now he's dedicated to replacing crack screens for teenagers. If you want to see the audit report that showed Mike was spending 40 hours a week on his crypto rig, instead of actually managing the company, hit that subscribe button. I've got the data to prove that entitlement is the most expensive bug in the system. After the mediation, Mike was a ghost. He had signed away his stock and his pride just to stay out of a jumpsuit. With Mike officially scrubbed from the building like a persistent virus, the board did something I never expected. They gave me his old office. Not as an employee, but as the head of the external firm they were now paying a massive retainer to. The first thing I did was call the junior tech. A kid named Leo, 22M. Leo had been Mike's favorite punching bag. Mike used to make him pick up his dry cleaning and warm up his car in the winter. When the servers crashed on my wedding day, Mike had spent 3 hours screaming in Leo's face, blaming him for not being able to hack the encryption I'd spent 10 years mastering. Leo, I said, walking into the office that still smelled like Mike's cheap cigars. Get in here. Leo walked in looking terrified, probably expecting to be fired for being guilty by association. Instead, I handed him a sledgehammer I'd bought on the way in. The board wants this place modernized, I told him. And the first thing that goes is Mike's custom-built, executive mahogany desk, the one he used to hide his crypto rig under. We spent the next hour absolutely demolishing that desk. It was the most therapeutic team-building exercise I've ever experienced. Every swing of the hammer felt like a strike against the years of lack of dedication, insults, and the weekend calls. We didn't just stop at the desk. We tore out the shag carpet and the motivational leader posters. But the real revenge was the final piece of data I'd recovered from Mike's frozen server. While Leo and I were setting up the new innovation lounge, complete with beanbags, a high-end espresso machine, and a server rack that actually worked, I found a hidden folder on Mike's private partition labeled Bonus Projections. It turned out Mike had been skimming off the top of the IT department's budget for years. He'd been reporting hardware failures that never happened and pocketing the replacement cash. But he'd also been keeping a black list of employees he planned to fire before their stock options vested. My name was at the top of that list, dated for the week after my honeymoon. Mike hadn't fired me because of my lack of dedication. He'd fired me because he wanted to steal my $40,000 in vested shares before they hit my account. I took that folder straight to the board's legal counsel. Because Mike had already signed a global release during the mediation, he couldn't be sued for more money, but the board could use this evidence to void his non-disparagement clause. The next morning, the company sent out an internal memo to the entire logistics industry. It wasn't a polite departure notice. It was a full, detailed account of Mike's unprofessional conduct, financial irregularities, and attempted theft of employee benefits. The revenge was a total industry blackballing. Mike didn't just lose his job, he lost his name. He was a pariah. The junior tech, Leo, was promoted to lead internal admin with a 40% raise. We turned Mike's old office into a lounge where the IT team actually hangs out and collaborates, rather than hiding in cubicles. We even framed a piece of the shattered mahogany desk and hung it on the wall with a plaque that reads, "In memory of dedication." As for Mike, I heard from a former colleague that he tried to apply for a management role at a rival firm. The hiring manager just laughed and forwarded him the board's memo. Last I heard, he's not even at the mall kiosk anymore. He's working as a night shift security guard for a warehouse, the kind where he has to walk around and check that the servers aren't handshaking with the wrong person. He wanted me to dedicate my life to his greed. Now he's dedicated to a flashlight and a 4 a.m. patrol. If you want to see the before and after photos of the office transformation, or the look on Leo's face when he saw his first lead admin paycheck, hit that subscribe button. I'm currently looking for a second Mike to humble, and I think I see one in the sales department. Exactly 1 year has passed since the wedding day massacre, and my consulting firm is now a 6-figure success story. I was sitting in my newly designed office, the one that used to be a tomb of mahogany and ego, when my assistant told me I had a persistent visitor in the lobby. No appointment, just a man who claimed he was an old friend of the firm. I walked out, and for a second I didn't even recognize him. Mike had lost about 30 pounds, and not the healthy way. He was wearing a suit that was 2 sizes too big and shoes that had seen better decades. The entitlement was still there, lurking behind a thin veil of humility, like a predator trying to pretend it's a house cat. "I'm here for the senior consultant position," Mike said, trying to summon that old executive boom in his voice. It came out as a raspy whisper. I saw the listing on LinkedIn. I figured, you know the quality of my work. We had our disagreements, but I'm ready to come back and help you scale this thing. I'll even take a junior salary to start. I almost dropped my tablet. The man who fired me on my wedding day for lack of dedication was now standing in my lobby, asking for a job at the company I built with the settlement money he provided. "Mike," I said, leaning against the glass wall of the innovation lounge, "you don't just have a disagreement with someone and then ask them for a reference. You tried to frame me for a felony." You tried to get my husband fired. You stole company resources for a crypto rig that nearly burned the building down. It was a misunderstanding, Mike barked, his face turning that familiar shade of failed manager purple. I was under a lot of pressure. You owe me, kid. If I hadn't fired you, you wouldn't have this fancy office or that settlement. I'm the reason you're successful. I'm an investor in your future, technically. The revenge was the absolute silence that followed. I didn't get angry. I didn't shout. I just turned my tablet around and showed him the hiring guidelines for my firm. Requirement number 1, Mike. Must have a verifiable history of ethical leadership and technical competence. Requirement number 2. Must not be a blacklisted felon with a history of fiduciary theft. You don't meet the baseline, Mike. You don't even meet the human requirement. I signaled for the security guard, who ironically was a guy Mike used to ignore in the halls. Wait! Mike shouted as he was being steered toward the exit. You can't do this. I have a family. I'm being evicted. Just give me a referral. Tell the board I was a visionary. Just one lie for an old friend. I'm dedicated to the truth now, Mike, I said. And the truth is, you're the most expensive mistake this company ever made. Don't come back. The final satisfaction came an hour later. I sent a final update to the board, letting them know Mike had attempted to infiltrate the building again. They responded by filing a permanent restraining order. Mike is now legally prohibited from being within 500 feet of the servers he once thought he owned. Leo and the rest of the IT team celebrated that night by ordering $500 worth of sushi on the innovation budget. We sat in the beanbags, looking at the plaque on the wall, and realized that the lack of dedication was never about me. It was about Mike's inability to realize that you can't build a kingdom on a foundation of lies. Mike wanted me to be his servant. Now he's just a ghost story we tell new hires to make them appreciate the espresso machine. If you've enjoyed watching this CEO turn into a CEO, hit that subscribe button. I'm currently writing a book on how to fire your boss before they fire you, and Mike gets his own dedicated chapter. Want to hear about the Karen from the HR department who tried to report our office lounge for not being professional? Subscribe for the next saga.